Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. We have a tremendous live stream planned this evening. Jack Smith busted, caught red-handed, committing what we believe is perjury. Right to Congress's face, sitting down in a deposition under oath, saying he did not look at the text messages of a bunch of government officials. He never got the content of their messages. Turns out he did. He got a bunch of that material delivered right over to him. Chuck Grassley, as usual, bringing us the goods. We've got the documents. We've got the video of Jack Smith lying through his teeth in Congress coming right up. And some reaction to this because people are saying he needs to be prosecuted. And if this doesn't do it, man, I don't know what else will. But we'll unpack the entire story. Lots of activity on this today. We're excited to share that here with you tonight. We've also got another big 2020 election win. Wow. 6 years later, we've now got the Court of Appeals in D.C. saying that a state lawsuit brought by New York and a bunch of others before the 2020 election, Trump, of course, tried to actually create some electoral integrity back at the time. And when he was making those changes in 2020, they sued him into oblivion. And the lower court said that he lost back then, and now it's 2026, and we're completely vindicated. Wow. Thanks, guys, for now getting this delivered to us after the Biden administration is already over. So thanks for nothing, but it's a good victory. We'll talk about it. We've also got some good updates on the SAVE Act. Apparently, they're going to cram that puppy in there and try to get it passed. We're excited about that. We'll detail what's going on there. And then lastly, we had a very rare treat today. We had Amy Coney Barrett and Judge Kagan testifying in front of Congress. I've got the best clips queued up. Amy Coney Barrett seems totally freaked out about all of the leftist lunatic attacks, saying that it is a big problem for her and her family, and people have some ideas on what she can do if she wants to go spend time with her kids. But we've got a great show planned this evening. Thanks for joining us a little bit late. We are getting close to baby time, and so we appreciate you adjusting the schedule ever so slightly. Let's make sure the tubes are working, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes on the day because we got some good stuff coming up here. And hopefully it leads to even more good stuff in the form of an indictment. So let's take a look at what's going on right here, starting with Chuck Grassley in the House. Jack Smith busted. Chuck Grassley now releasing documents that explain exactly how he may have been dishonest to Congress. He sat down some time ago in December of last year under oath for a long deposition. We heard that he was already spying on a bunch of other senators, getting their metadata from their cell phone records and other things. And he said at the time that he was not reading their text messages. He didn't get the substance of the materials inside. Turns out he did. We've got all the documents queued up here. We're going to hear from some senators who were victims of this attack. And the question, of course, that is always asked in the aftermath of this is, are they going to do anything about this? Jack Smith has been out hitting the media, trying to kind of pre-butt a lot of this evidence that is now coming out for all to see, trying to pretend that he's a good guy, an innocent person, and he's the victim of political retribution. We know that's happening because of these documents, and they all just dropped. And Grassley gave us the highlight. Before we go in, let me just show you the list of all of these people. Oh my goodness. Grassley, Johnson, Cornyn, Graham, rest in peace, Hawley, Mike Lee, Booker. They threw in a couple Democrats every now and then just to kind of pretend that they're not completely partisan hacks. They threw in Cory Booker as a Democrat. Everybody else on the list: Rand Paul, Rick Scott, Roy Blunt, Susan Collins, Tom Scott, Tom Cotton, Kev McCarthy. We got Jim Jordan, Steve Scalise, Andy Biggs. Everybody and anybody, Elise Stefanik, Lee Zeldin, who's now in the administration. I wonder if he's upset about this. Thomas Massey, Mo Brooks, and more. In total, 44 people were spied on by Jack Smith, and he lied about it. And Chuck Grassley released all the documents. We're going to zoom in on the emails explicitly and show you exactly what happened here. But Grassley shared this today. It is blowing the lid off a bunch of senators' heads who were saying this is outrageous and this needs to be addressed. Grassley said, "I received these records from the DOJ. confirming Jack Smith's investigative team reviewed the contents of the text messages sent by 44 members of Congress. And Grassley is one of the 44. I'm alerting my colleagues who were impacted and will release the records with Senator Johnson so the American people can see the evidence. And we do have the records here queued up. We've got the letter from the DOJ, Office of Legislative Affairs. We've also got the internal emails, 90 pages of these things, but there's a big PowerPoint and a bunch of other documents that we can fly through. But we'll show you exactly what they were doing, because these are the same people who are working on behalf of the Democratic Party, in this case, Joe Biden, to try to engineer a political outcome, to try to imprison their political opponents, to besmirch the entire good name of anybody who supported the president. And now it's all on display for us to read. And so hopefully many of these people are also indicted. But one person named Rand Paul confirmed that in December 2025, Jack Smith swore under oath that he didn't spy on text messages belonging to members of Congress. He did. Today, new evidence confirms that he did spy on dozens of members of Congress, myself included. This is a blatant abuse of power and exactly what our founders warned about. And Rand Paul got this little 19-second clip here for us. We'll listen to a broader clip in full context. But here's what Jack Smith said under oath to Congress, committing perjury, lying about what he actually did.
Did the toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls?
No.
Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages?
No.
Liar.
Can you explain for us on the record?
Okay, so that is the little excerpt there. We also saw Josh Hawley says, you know, sounds to me that looks like perjury, a crime. And maybe he should be indicted immediately. So Hawley also said, Joe Biden's DOJ not only tapped my phones, I just learned that they illegally obtained my texts with members of Trump's administration. Everybody involved needs to be prosecuted. And that's over to you, Todd Blanche, and others. And here's the full context of this clip, in case anybody wants to doubt what's going on here. We see Jack Smith here under oath. He was under deposition for 8 hours over on YouTube, and we hit the highlights of this when it all occurred. But he is in this exchange. He's being asked questions about Rudy Giuliani and Boris Epstein, saying that they were tapping everybody's phones. And then it picks up from there. Here's how this entire exchange went.
And we might touch on Mr. Perry's involvement later on. Just want to flag that for you. So it sounds like, and I want to hear it from you, did your request for the toll records of certain congressional members, did that relate to phone calls made to these members of Congress on or around January 6th of 2021?
Including that, yes.
And how big was the window of records that you requested for these members of Congress?
The records regarding those calls on January 6th, the period of time was from, I believe it was January 4th to 7th, but there was earlier subpoenas, including the one referenced earlier today regarding Congressman McCarthy. There was a broader period of time from, I want to say it's about November 3rd through, again, it was either January 6th or 7th.
Okay. And I've heard you mention evidence such as text messages with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Giuliani. Did you also have Mr. Giuliani's records as part of your investigation? Did you collect those phone records, I mean?
We did.
Okay. So in your prosecutorial experience, do you generally seek to obtain call records from both individuals involved in a telephonic call or message?
We do, and in this case, with the records for that evening, it was particularly important because when we interviewed Boris Epstein, one of the things that came out was that Rudy Giuliani had 2 phones and that Boris Epstein had another phone, and we needed to make sure that we weren't missing any calls in terms of where the calls came from. And so it would corroborate the records that we had, but also make sure that there's not calls that we missed.
Did you ever learn why Mr. Giuliani and Mr. Epstein had multiple phones?
Business and personal?
No.
Yeah.
Did the toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls?
No.
Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages?
No.
Liar.
Can you explain for us on the record what information generally is included in a toll records request?
Hey, watch.
Sure. Again, my understanding from the prosecutor's perspective is it is non-content information. It's generally about when the call started, when the call stopped.
Nope.
That would include, obviously, the duration of the call and who the call is to and who the call is from. That's the basic information.
What about the
that you
text?
want to get from a toll records subpoena?
Then let's fast forward to, say this would have gone to a trial. How would you, in your experience, have used this type of evidence in a trial?
Oh, it would have been relevant in a number of ways. So it would have been relevant. You could put it together in a summary chart to show the series of contacts, and it could be relevant to show the campaign that evening to reach out to senators to delay the proceedings. Could also be relevant to show, for example, on the afternoon of January 6th, of notice that there was notice that violence was going on. Congressmen, both Republican.
Yeah, Stephen Son, the former Capitol Hill chief of police, notified everybody that they needed more resources, but Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party didn't maneuver anybody over there. In fact, President Trump said he would send thousands of National Guard there to protect the entire building, and they rejected that. They said that if he were to do that, it would be like seizing power. So if Trump wants to secure the grounds, which is not his ground, he's going to seize power. Trump doesn't secure the grounds, Trump is going to seize power. You see how this goes. So he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. And turns out Jack Smith and his team, they knew exactly what they were getting. And it was the content of the messages. We've got the emails here all queued up. We'll come back to this. But this is what Jack, who was, let us never forget, not a real boy, illegitimately appointed to this position, never a U.S. attorney duly confirmed by the Senate, appointed by the president. Judge Cannon in Florida found that he illegally appropriated the money for this entire team. He had no right to spend a dime to hire this entire group of people, and they put together a lot of work. Okay, this is wild how many people were working on this, and their work product is now on display. They were grinding to go and try to implicate all these senators. And the list, as we shared at the beginning, was massive. And so here's what Grassley said in his press release. Then we'll get into the actual documents. But he explains, we have now gotten the documents. Jack's team obtained and reviewed text messages from 44 members of Congress as part of the Biden DOJ weaponization of the government. Evidence shows that investigators bypassed a required filter team review process. And we know a filter team is supposed to act like a filter. If you have problematic messages that are coming through, things that are attorney-client privileged, for example, you filter those out. And you remove those. You're not supposed to look at those and breach that protocol. They didn't care. They did that. Evidence shows they did this. They violated protocols and they infringed on other constitutional guardrails. Now, this is a bombshell discovery, according to Chuck, and I agree. Comes in new records released by the Judiciary Committee and the other permanent subcommittee on investigations from Johnson and Grassley as part of their ongoing Arctic Frost oversight. And Arctic Frost was this other FBI investigation that had been going on for years before Jack Smith ever even came into power. And he then larked around and role played as an independent special counsel. And of course, that doesn't even exist. They had to cobble together the Reno regulations to try to shove him in front of America and give him all this power to which he was not entitled. And he was ultimately thrown off the case. So in total, he inherited another case. He didn't do any independent investigation at all, and just gobbled up what Joe Biden's corrupt FBI was already doing. Grassley and Johnson requested the records. They got a legally protected whistleblower disclosure, which is a little troubling. Like, why does a whistleblower have to come out and alert Grassley and Johnson about this? Why is the DOJ not just creating on an internal investigation, pulling those out and sending them over or releasing them on their own? The DOJ's letter to the chairman, which we'll read, and the records indicates that Smith's investigative team circumvented their own filter process, which was established to protect privileged materials. They didn't want those things being swept up into criminal prosecutions, but they were. And also directly access the contents of the texts that were sent by Republicans and like 3 Democrats and members of the House of Representatives to White House officials during Trump's first term. Comms from members of Congress pertaining to their official legislative duties, for which they should deserve some protection, are protected from criminal prosecution under the speech and debate clause. Bypassing the filter team evades consideration of these additional privileges, like legislative privilege and attorney-client privilege. So Grassley and Johnson came out with messages. They say this is ridiculous. They disregarded their own protocols, and they got all of our text messages gobbled up, and the records are now released. Here's some more background before we dive in. The records are summarized in the DOJ cover letter. We'll read that. In June 23, Jack's office went and subpoenaed NARA. Okay, so Joe Biden comes in completely illegitimately. He's now the president. Normally, the policy is one incoming administration doesn't waive executive privilege to protect the outgoing administration. But Biden, brain dead Joe, and all of his lawyers said that we really don't care. January 6th was a historic event. It was the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. Forgetting about Pearl Harbor, forgetting about 9/11 and everything else. They said that that gives them justification to waive executive privilege and to give over everything that then Jack Smith, who's illegitimate, could take to use to prosecute Joe Biden's top political opponent. And they lecture us about fascism or retribution. So Trump also got gobbled up in this. Mark Meadows, Dan Scavino, Ivanka Trump, Stephen Miller, Peter Navarro, John Ratcliffe, who's now at the CIA, Kash Patel. Maybe this will bother him. Rudy Giuliani, Kellyanne Conway, Mike Pence, and more. And they processed these records extremely rapidly. NARA gave the texts from Biden back over to the special counsel's office on August 21, 2023. Within half an hour, one of Smith's senior lawyers, another hack called Thomas Wyndham, downloaded the text. And then an hour later, other members of the team began reviewing the texts. No filtering at all. It's like a free-for-all. It's like kids in a candy store. Just go hog wild. Read everything you want and go and find something that we can use. And they didn't find anything. Never even came out until we found that this was the investigation. It was a massive fishing expedition. They had to go make up other claims to bring their J6 case, which ultimately went nowhere. They had to go make up claims for the raid of the classified documents. We've now learned that Jack Smith and his own people were mishandling classified documents while they were prosecuting Trump. They left the SCIF door wide open overnight, totally perverting the chain of custody of any evidence that was inside, failing to communicate that to Trump's defense team to say whether or not that was actually exculpatory information that might exonerate their client because all of their evidence was tainted by somebody. Nothing communicated, and they couldn't find anything even then. So they had to then concoct the J6 case, which included a bunch of immunized conduct because the president has the right to talk to his attorney general, has the right to talk to people inside the executive branch. They prosecuted him for charges that the Supreme Court said they could never prosecute him for. So the whole thing was a fiction. But what happened is they went after a large portion of Congress, everybody listed here. And here's what the DOJ said about this. And I'm not too thrilled with this letter either, but at least it's a start. So they sent this back over to the chairman, Honorable Chuck Grassley. They say, all right, listen, Chuck, we're responding to your letter that you sent back in May. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. What? Did you guys not look at these files? What are you doing over there? In response to your letter, we have looked into the issue, I guess for the first time, and are sending the attached document production in addition to this letter. Within the context of the search warrants, the department has established guidelines on the use of filter teams to protect attorney-client privilege and work product doctrine. Filter teams might be appropriate in other non-search warrant contexts and more. Gives us a lot of the technical stuff. We have good policies to make sure that the DOJ follows the policies and doesn't breach people's rights. Now, as noted in the attached records, the department established a filter team to evaluate materials in the course of both of Jack Smith's investigations that relate back to J6. There was one called Project Coconut and another one called Project Cranberry. The team's purpose was to prevent investigators on Jack's team and others on the FBI's team from accessing privileged materials. Now, to this end, the filter team's role was to review the information, make a privilege determination, and then filter it out. Here's part of the policy. They wrote, our goal is to filter information. Additionally, they said, filter team members are not going to be a part of the investigative team because they're on a filter team. They can't They can read certain things. And if it's privileged, then they can't also be on the investigation team because they'll know what's inside those documents and they'll use them in their investigation. Otherwise, it's one big incestuous, disgusting investigation. So the filter team's review and coding process is described in the documents, and they reviewed several million documents. It demonstrates that process. They have regular agendas. It's all documented and is shown in the documents. They processed other records from NARA. Then on June 2nd, 2023, Thomas Wyndham, Senior Assistant Special Counsel, emailed NARA's General Counsel, all under Joe Biden, Gary Stern. And he said, I want all text messages from October 2020 through January 20, 2021, back into Trump's administration, all the way through until when Joe Biden came in, from phones associated with a long list of White House personnel. Then on Sunday, June 11th, a different employee at the Justice Department sent an email to the contractor that was actually managing the filter team and the document review software to alert them to an issue, saying apparently the permission settings had also been set inappropriately. Wow. Allowing the investigative team members the ability to access the filter team, and they didn't sort anything. And it's so weird how there's always just like an inappropriate setting. It's the weirdest thing. It's like on even election machines, how come they're not zeroed out when you start shoving ballots in there? Oh, administrative oversight. Yeah. So another inappropriate setting. The email asked the contractor to adjust the settings to prevent any of that access. And they said this is a top priority. So once they've got it all, try to undo that. Then at 12:19 on August 21, Gary Stern, General Counsel of NARA, emailed Wyndham stating that we are now, so they should have had all of this fixed by then. Okay, filter team, you're getting access to stuff you shouldn't have access to. There really is no filter team in practice because everybody can see everything. Then on August 21st, Gary from NARA emails Jack's people, Wyndham, stating that NARA was producing 54 spreadsheets containing the requested White House text messages. NARA sent separate emails with a download link and a password. Then at 12:45, Wyndham emailed several members of the investigative team, that have not been filtered yet because they just got them over from NARA, stating that he had already downloaded the spreadsheets with the text, and he said everybody on the team download the spreadsheets as well. No filtering. Soon as they come in from NARA, everybody gets them. By 1:02, Mr. Wyndham was already emailing members of the team particular text that he copied from production. We'll take a look at some of those. Then other documents were also saved directly to Jack's team's shared drive, therefore showing that Jack's team bypassed the filter team completely and directly accessed these text messages. And so it's like multiple layers of problems. First of all, these are congressional messages, and they shouldn't have even been looking at them in the first place based on the speech and debate clause and a separation of powers and their communications with the executive branch, all within the prospective job duties that they were elected to perform. Then once they got them, and they never should have, then they also didn't do the proper procedure to actually filter them out. The FBI then identified people whose phone numbers sent and received the texts. Now, among the materials, the department has determined that Jack Smith's team obtained text messages, not just the phone numbers, not just the metadata at all, from White House personnel and several senators and representatives, all listed here. The only Democrats on this list are Cory Booker. Let's see who else. We have another one, Karen Bass. Okay, so we've got like a token Democrat, Cory Booker, and a token communist, Karen Bass. And we also got Adam Smith from Washington. So it looks like 3 in total to make this a bipartisan inquiry. We're not just attacking the Republicans, but you see exactly what's going on. So although the filter team and their procedures focused on identifying materials protected by attorney-client and work product, and not other ones protected by other privileges, the office had previously been made aware that this was a problem. If you go after congressional messages, there will be constitutional concerns about this because they're privileged under the speech and debate clause. Now, as detailed so they were on notice. In other words, they knew they had a problem. They didn't care. They just gobbled up everything that they possibly could, deployed it to the entire team. They talked about it in emails that we'll read in a minute. Now, as detailed in a prior disclosure, On May 17, 2023, a little over 2 weeks before Wyndham contacted NARA for the text messages, and this is Jack's special senior guy. So Jack Smith is responsible for all of this. And he sat there and he said, no, we did not get the text messages. He said unequivocally, no. Not, I don't know. Not, I got to refer you over to Thomas Wyndham. Not, I wasn't a part of that process. He said no. And he lied. The investigative team sought and also approved to target the toll records of other several senators that they believe communicated with Trump or Rudy about the vote. An attorney from the integrity section raised the privilege issue that day in an email sent to Wyndham. Said, hey, Thomas, you know there's some litigation risk about getting these records. Does it violate the speech or debate clause in the DC circuit? They don't care. They didn't give a crap. So they were on notice that they shouldn't have been asking for these things. They did. Once they got them, they were on notice that they shouldn't have been sharing them, and they did. We hope this information is useful. And it's like, I mean, yeah, it's useful, but not as useful as an indictment. So the department remains committed to transparency and accountability, especially regarding the Biden administration's weaponization efforts. One way to get accountability, Patrick Davis, assistant AG, you're at the DOJ. So transparency is great. But an indictment, a criminal prosecution would be another good thing to do. So it is useful to us, but we don't really have the capability to bring forth criminal charges. That's on you guys. And so that, I hope this is helpful. Hopefully this was enlightening, like you just read a magazine or something. But when you combine that with the top here, it's like, wow, thanks for bringing this issue to our attention. We had no idea that he was doing this. It's frustrating, but hopefully this issue is now brought to Todd Blanche's attention, and they have the pressure of the senators that is now being put on them to bring a criminal prosecution for lying to Congress, false statements made, U.S. Code Section 1001 for lying to Congress in a deposition under oath, and there must be repercussions. Now, let me show you the internal docs that were also released. It's about 90 pages, but we'll put the highlights here. You can see we go all the way back to May 27, 2022. Same emails, same people that we just referenced, Thomas Wyndham, Kelly Zussman, and others. This is about Project Coconut and the filter review meeting summary. So they have a whole meeting to say, hey, this is going to be the workflow. We're actually going to check records that come in. Of course, they didn't do any of this, so all of this is meaningless. They said, well, we're going to make some relevancy and privilege determinations and baseline. We're going to have a workflow here. So the documents will come in. We'll do some keyword searches, and then we'll take some action items. We've got Deloitte working on this. We've got government DOJ people working on this and more. So we know how to do it. We have a process. We're just not going to follow it at all. Then they even share with us a whole spreadsheet, a whole PowerPoint deck, walking us through. And like, these people are just wild when it comes to Jack Smith. Like, look at this picture. What kind of a moron created this PowerPoint? Like, you know what this slide needs? A picture of Jack Smith at The Hague in a court in Europe. Not even with the American flag and his goofy outfit from before he was illegally appointed to conduct this fake fraudulent investigation. That's who we're dealing with. Not Jack Smith standing next to the American flag, not Jack Smith standing in the DOJ getting sworn in. And it's like a Kim Jong-un photo or something. Like, you walk in, it's like our dear leader. Oh, Jack Smith, we love him so much. Oh. They're weird people in addition to being corrupt hacks. So they've got two investigations. They call one Project Coconut, J6, Project Cranberry, Mar-a-Lago, the raid. Then Garland illegally appoints Jack Smith on November 18, 2022. Then they walk us through everything. Okay, our task. We're investigating all of these people. Here are the procedures. We're going after Rudy Giuliani. And the known lawyers are all targets. And so we're going to go after them. Now, they also want to code things. So if you're using a filter team, you're going to code things. This is a certain privilege. We're going to withhold, redact. We're going to mark this for follow-up, whatever. And they looked at 700,000 documents. Now, we can make a lot of fun of them for this nonsense. But the truth is, They're organized, okay? They're making PowerPoint slide decks. They've got spreadsheets out the wazoo. They're having weekly stand-up meetings. They're putting all this in their PowerPoints with their dear leader, Jack, and they're highly, highly motivated. So they walk us through all the filter team members, none of whom did any filtering at all. And same thing on the other investigation, Project Coconut and Cranberry. Another May 2023 meeting, same thing, dear leader Jack, who's completely illegitimate. Same slides, someone copy and pasted, and one was for each investigation. So they walk us through all of those things. Then we send the memo. Okay, so Jack's appointed December 26, 2022. One person called Norman Wong gets an email from highlighter girl, Molly Gaston, the same highlighter girl who was prosecuting President Trump in the January 6th case, the same woman who said that I will tell the defense lawyers what they need to know in the millions of pages of discovery. Trump doesn't need a bunch of time to prepare his defense. We want this case to go to trial before the 2024 elections so that we can convict him and put him in jail and use that to smear his name in all of the elections. And Trump said we need at least like 3-5 years to actually go through all the discovery. This is a January 6th case. Molly said, listen, Judge Chutkin from Jamaica, I will just identify as the prosecuting lawyer everything that Trump's defense will need. And then we can just expedite the whole process. And Chutkin said, that's a great idea. So Molly is continuing to do this behind the scenes. She says, we've been working on the logistics of the filter team. A lot of back and forth on this. They don't do any filtering at all, as the DOJ just confirmed, so we can fast forward. He responds, all good. Another person responds, great. So now we're going to just continue to expand the team. We're going to communicate about these other needs. We can reschedule and so on and so forth. Now, here's a draft memo about the filter team that we're going to finalize today. Once again, from Highlighter Girl, who makes another appearance here. Then here's the memo. Okay, we will filter. All of it articulated. Kelly Sussman is going to be out of Oregon. She's going to handle it. And so on and so forth. You get the policy. It doesn't matter because they didn't filter crap. So as we continue, you see all of these people are listed on here. Now, I don't know what the status is of all of these people and whether they're still at the DOJ, but I sure as hell hope not. So then they give us an assignment list. They can show who's logging in and when. Relativity account status. So this is the software they log into to go access all the files. All these people are on this. And by the way, this woman, my understanding is still there at the DOJ. Jocelyn Ballantyne, who was responsible for some of the biggest January 6 prosecutions, is still there. And she's still working for Jeanine Pirro because Jeanine likes her or something. And she's now prosecuting Brian Cole Jr., the alleged J5 pipe bomber. Okay. So she's still there. So are other people still there? Probably, even though they were a part of this disgusting abuse of power. I would guess many of them are still there. So while this happens, more emails back and forth, and somebody else got deactivated. I've got these accounts deactivated. We're going to pull together some other lists. You get the gist of it. Okay. So who should have access to these things? Who's on the filter team? Who's on the investigation team? Someone else. Hey, thanks, Thomas. We're going to get the additional 3 analysts. We'll let you know, put them back on the list, give them access. Another spreadsheet here about who's working. And look at all these people working on this, okay? Gobs of people combing through the files, trying to find something that actually has substance to it so that they can prosecute President Trump, which comes later in 23. So it's like all hands on deck. And I would love to see this type of energy from our side. We know Kash Patel has apparently deployed 250 FBI analysts down into Georgia, Fulton County. So hopefully they're working on their PowerPoint slides. But here's more. And they have another meeting, okay? Another Project Coconut meeting. We're going to get to the good stuff here in a minute. They talk about the substantive team and the filter team. It's on their meeting agenda. So they have their stand-ups on who can access what and how all of those policies that we just read through are all implemented. Continues on. Another stand-up meeting. This is how it works. Relativity, maintenance schedule, the software that they're using. Documents are here. Who's doing what? Data intake. We've got these people. Looks like the Enrique Tarrio MacBook is listed here. Other items are being processed or going through the protocol. Then we get another meeting agenda, and we'll fast forward through a lot of this. We get it. They're having a bunch of meetings. And then something interesting happens. Here we get an email from TPW, which I believe is Thomas Wyndham. He says, from him to the entire Project Coconut team at Deloitte, which is a third party who's helping them with this analysis, Deloitte, new NARA production for upload. Here is the password. Dun, 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 dun. You get this email that is released. Hi, you have received access to a ServView file share. The link to access this will expire at this moment. Deloitte refers to Deloitte member firm, and they're processing a lot of these records. Then we see another email, June 23rd, 2023. Below is the agenda for today's call. We look forward to connecting at 4. We've got statistics on the search warrant and the DOJ documents. All that is completed, and we'll have some more updates here. Then we start to see the release. Now, hi, this comes from Mario Vento over at the DOJ. Don't know if he's still there. Hey, hi, team and Deloitte team. As we have discussed, we now need to address the permission settings on the search warrant returns. Please adjust the settings so that no one on the substantive team, the investigative team, can access the filter team's documents. Top priority right now. Please confirm. Turn off the access. Okay, dead to rights. You can see them writing it here. They all know they have a problem. People are accessing things they should not be accessing. There is no filtering going on. And then what happens is after that, we got August 21, as they articulated for us, another email. Here's where the good stuff comes in. Hi, Gary Stern from the National Archives and Records Administration, now under Joe Biden's failed stewardship. Gary Stern, the lawyer, sends an email. Hi, Thomas Wyndham, Jack Smith's senior advisor. He says, hi, Thomas, in response to your June 2nd, 23, something for NARA to produce records of the Presidential Records Act pursuant to the rules, the following requisite notification has been sent to former and incumbent presidents. We've identified the following presidential records of the Trump administration that are now responsive to your request. And here's where the goods get dropped. I'm now sending you from the National Archives. They waived all of Trump's privilege when he was in the White House. He has executive privilege. They said, we don't give a crap about that either. They sent over 54 spreadsheets containing the requested custodian's text messages. The text messages, not the metadata, not the toll records for messages being sent to and fro. You will receive an email from my colleague with a link to download these babies. And then they sent the password all redacted right there. So Thomas then gets this and he says the following. There's the email. Boom. You got 54 spreadsheets coming your way. We've scraped everything. And then we get there's the onslaught. So then he doesn't go through the filter team at all. So Thomas Wyndham sends this email to a bunch of other people, FBI, DOJ, copied a bunch of other people, probably Molly Gaston. They all use their acronyms, saying, for reference, attached is the link and the email password is this one. Then GDB responds, okay, I'll save and circulate the link, stand by. We'll get them to ALS in the next hour if Maria okays. Wyndham responds, hey guys, can you please download this, Jamie and Dan? Tells others, I've already downloaded it. These should go out in discovery quickly. Do you want me to put them somewhere or wait for the FBI to transfer? Hey, and Gary at NARA, good speaking with you the other week. Please find attached redacted requiring NARA to produce these documents. Call me with any questions. That's a follow-up. And then we get a bunch of names listed here. And look at all these people, man. Kash Patel right there, John Ratcliffe now at the CIA, Jared Kushner is working on his island, Ivanka Trump also gobbled up in this. Garrett Ziegler, our friend Garrett Ziegler is in the house. Man, shout out to Garrett. He's over at Marco Polo USA. Good for him showing up here. Eric Hirschman. We've got Donald Trump, of course, Dan Scavino. We got Chad Mizell, Chad Gilmartin, Cassidy Hutchinson, Clavicle Girl. Maybe she hadn't flipped yet. We've also got Alyssa Farah, formerly on The View, and a bunch of other people all getting their records gobbled up. And who else is here? Kellyanne Conway. We got Mark Meadows, former chief of staff. Pat Cipollone. Peter Navarro, of course, they put him in prison. Rudy Giuliani's on the list. Russ Vought, who is now at OMB. Stephen Miller, of course, we know who he is. And many others all under attack in addition to all of the congressional individuals. So boom, single production consisting of 54 Excel files with text messages from White House phones. So all of those people texting a bunch of congressional people, and the congressional people's messages getting gobbled up because this was their original target list. Someone else, Molly or somebody, that's not Gaston, I think that's someone else, Mario. I'm on my phone, so I can't look at the links. Am I correct that this is all a single production from NARA? Someone else says you can copy to ALS and move to production and put the emails on the T drive. Put the source material right here so everyone can access it. Put the text messages right there, and then put the emails over on this one. Thanks as always. Boom, we'll get it uploaded immediately. I'll save and circulate a link. Stand by. We'll get them in the next hour. Another email thread. And then they transmit it right over from Jack's office to Thomas Wyndham over to production. Boom. Here's what we've got. Bates numbers, emails, text messages, all articulated here. Get this in today. That would be much appreciated. They get them uploaded and start to circulate the link. Someone else, and again, that's a follow-up, so these are kind of duplicate chains. But here's another actual screenshot of what was in the folders. First two screenshots are the production. Third screenshot is our T drive, National Archives holding folder. All of these spreadsheets. Okay, so you open one of those up, all of Stephen Miller's text messages. Open another one up, Jared Kushner's text messages. Open another one up, Ivanka's in there. Donald Trump and more. The content of their messages, not just the metadata. And they're communicating on the other end, the receiving end, with a bunch of congressional senators and House representatives. And they didn't filter out any of those messages. They just uploaded them all into their big, disgusting, fat folders. So you see more of that right here, because as soon as those are uploaded, and here's what one of the actual spreadsheets looks like. So you open that up, and they've got this in a document. So Wyndham sends this to Tad and others, including Molly Gaston, I'm sure. And these sick people are now reading through private communications of senators and White House officials, executive privilege on the one side, legislative privilege on the other side, and they're just reading their messages at Jack Smith's office, and Joe Biden's White House enabled it. It's crazy. So, and then they're like, no, but we're not spying on you though. Like, all right. So Mark Meadows is here. Looks like might be the person, Mr. Meadows, might be sending these messages, and you can read them. We'll show you. Somebody sent this message. They said, after being berated again, I told him that the court is the fastest way, and that's how the current process was set up by the legislature. Okay, so now it's December 2020, and we're trying to figure out, looks like December 5th, courts are all stalling and dismissing litigation, lawsuits flying all over the country. They say, oh, you have no standing. Oh, latches attached. You should have sued before. Oh, your claim is not ripe right now. You have to wait until after certification to come back and sue. Oh, you're the wrong party to sue. So cases dismissed everywhere. And then here's another message. I understand you spoke to POTUS and apparently it did not go well. Trump's not happy. Is it correct that you are not going to call a special session of the legislature, leaving it totally up to the courts? Then this person said, yeah, I got berated again. I'd like to know who that was. I told him the courts are the fastest way to get this done. This is how the legislature set it up. So the violation here is really unfathomable, but they did it. And it's right here in writing for us all to see. So here's some more. And then as soon as they got this message, then Thomas Wyndham doesn't filter any of it out. He says to everybody immediately, September 5th, 2023, from Thomas to Molly, highlighter girl, and everybody else on the team. Hi, team. Depending your witness, please be aware of the attached. NARA recently produced to us text messages, not toll records, not metadata. the internals of the texts from a number of White House employees during the relevant time. FBI then identified in their system the relevant phone numbers of the counterparties. Who are the counterparties? Senators, House reps. Call me with questions. He sends it to everybody and sends them the spreadsheet. Okay, so all of those 4 spreadsheets, he shoves into one spreadsheet and it's labeled right here. Sends it to everybody, all on the investigative team. No filtering happened at all. Also then another email from Thomas, Jack's senior person, and he also references Jack. So Jack now knows. Says, team, we are about to embark on the witness menu project so that they can just create this giant fishing expedition to seize all comms, to just make up charges, and then put together a menu of people that they'd like to order from to make their case. So the witness menu project. In our meeting the other day, we suggested the deadline would be Wednesday, but now we're bumping it to Monday. So what is the project, writes one of the senior Jack Smith hacks. It is as follows. Attached is an Excel spreadsheet of the vast majority of our witnesses broken up amongst categories. Each of you has been assigned certain witnesses. If a witness is assigned to more than one attorney, we'd like to divide the work as you see fit, but consult with us if you'd like any information. If you think we've made an error in a witness, let us know. Here's how the team will be broken down. So MLD, MKV, EDP, you're working on the false electors, alternate electors. State, federal election officials, that's going over to TAD and GDB. Other state officials, same group. J6, in aftermath of that, we've got these two people with help from these two people. Molly is working on the campaign. That's not Gaston. Molly, MBB, somebody. You're working on campaign lawsuits, and these other two are working on White House. Now, tomorrow, Jack will meet with each team and discuss the overall objectives. And so Jack absolutely knows what evidence they've got behind these witnesses. He knows what the text messages are, what they say. He knows of the fact that they have retrieved them. And he just lied through his disgusting teeth to Congress when he said they didn't get that information at all. So please indict him. All forward calendar invites shortly. You can expect regular feedback meetings in general for each witness. We would like a thorough recitation in bullet point form of the following. What is a one-sentence description of your witness? Why would you like to pick them on the menu? For our case in chief, what would they testify about? What exhibits could we introduce through the witnesses, aka the text messages? The points on which the defense might cross them, and any other issues. And Mark Milley, they said, one example is on the spreadsheet, but the final spreadsheet will be more detailed than this. And we want you to fill out the rest of the spreadsheet so that you can assist us in determining why we want these witnesses to testify. And Mark Milley, as you know, was the guy who was calling the Chinese in the aftermath of J6. So we think very lowly of him. But we understand that this will take some time. And for instance, to generate the information, we know that you'll have to review the reports, transcripts, and exhibits, transcripts, and more. We want to narrow the number of witnesses down. Keep us posted on how things are going. Thank you for the incredible work. Highlighter Girl is back. Saying, we're not going to send these until later. And I hope everybody gets a little bit of rest this holiday weekend. Thank you for everything, says Highlighter Girl on September 1. So then assignments ultimately go out. The NARA production has been copied, available here to every single person. All of these acronyms were all listed there, so they get all of the text messages. Let's get this uploaded. And they said, done. GDB says, done. I've got everything uploaded. Assignments go out. This is what you're working on. Go pull up the witnesses. Go read their text messages. None of it filtered out. And what else we have here is a filter team roster. Now, I note that somebody is the only non-attorney roster person. And let me know if you have, this is a paralegal who's going to be on a filter team. And they put the filter team here. And that looks like email came after the disclosure of the other documents, or right around the same time. And here's more of the people on the filter team who, as we saw within hours, didn't do any filtering at all. The messages were sent to everybody and nothing was filtered out. Then we get some new emails, January 10th, 2025, looks like with an updated filter team roster in 2025. Interesting. All right. So they'll look at the evidence. They'll find the evidence. They'll say, oh, this is what we're going to use against this person. We're going to, breach all the privileges. We'll create our case. Then it sounds like maybe after the fact, they'll then create a filter team and then say we actually ran through the process after it was already completed, after the breach had already occurred and the taint had already been effectuated across the evidence. So wild, absolutely wild situation. And Grassley said in a response, he said, this was a runaway train that had no brakes. And based on information that we just got, we see that these people ignored their own routine investigative protocols. They didn't actually filter anything. And I know many people who got their text messages all swept up here. After repeated warnings, they've run roughshod over the Constitution. And same thing from Ron Johnson. Another grotesque example of Biden's weaponization. Jack's team acted with impunity as they disregarded their own filter protocols to access White House text messages, including from Congress. Now, at this point, no one should be shocked by Jack's recklessness and blatant abuse of power, but they should be outraged. And honestly, I don't know if Congress even is at all. Like, whatever. Well, whatever. We have to go work on Elizabeth Warren's housing bill. Okay. But I think that there should be prosecutions for this. We've been saying it for a long time, and now there's more evidence coming out every single day. And this was very interesting. And you could see just a quick recap, right? Within 1/2 an hour, one of Smith's lawyers downloaded the text, and then another hour later, other members of the team began downloading and reviewing the text. All of it was done without waiting for the filter team to evaluate any of the information. Total violation of their privilege. Congress should be demanding, pounding on the door of Todd Blanche and the others at the DOJ to actually bring some charges on this. But will that happen? Who knows? Much easier to just post about this crap on X. But meanwhile, the president will be out here on Thursday. We're going to be here live to cover that baby. And so we're excited for this one Thursday night. Hopefully you can come back and join us. 9 p.m. Eastern time. Here's the president explaining what is coming very soon.
Anticipating your big announcement on Thursday regarding election machines and integrity, can you give us sort of a sneak peek about what to expect and tell
Well,
the
I'd
audience
rather
in
save
America?
it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to
Why
say
should people
also.
watch, though?
But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news. It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up. But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
All right, so it should be about elections. Without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too. Maybe it'll be Iran or something else, but that's coming out on Thursday. And so we'll be here to cover this one. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. Thank you for sharing this video with somebody who needs to understand the depth of the Biden weaponization, who continues to say, well, Trump is going after his political opponents. Look what they've done. They've perverted the entire process. They've investigated 41 or 40 different Republicans to seize their private communications, to go on a fishing expedition to prosecute their political opponents. It's an insane way to govern a country. It cannot be allowed to stand. And so hopefully this, if not this, is the breaking point for some future investigation and prosecution. I don't know what else it's going to take. Almost like Jack Smith's people could just like go into Josh Hawley's house and sleep with his wife. And he's like, I can't believe this happened. No disrespect to Josh Hawley, just making an example. It's like, how much abuse can one government take? Hopefully there's repercussions coming soon. We'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for joining as we do. All right. So now let's talk about another election victory. 6 years later. All right. Well, we'll take it. It's good news. A 2020 election victory just dropped on our desk. We know it's 6 years later, and so thanks for nothing, DC Court of Appeals, but at least we're vindicated on this one. You can see this was brought ages ago, back in 2020, in the District of Columbia. There was a complaint filed August 25th, 2020 by the blue states. Trump was the president at the time. He was changing some U.S. Postal Service rules to say that we're going to solidify how we're handling ballots that are being mailed en masse thanks to the COVID emergency. And the Blues, just like what's happening now in 2026, didn't like any of the changes because they hate election integrity. And so they sued New Jersey, Hawaii, New York City, San Francisco County, and others all filed this lawsuit literally August 25th, 2020. 6 years ago, almost to the month. And it's been just sitting around being litigated for 6 years. And guess what? We just won. So every time you hear that stupid fake talking point about 60 cases that were lost, judges found, they haven't even been fully litigated yet. We've got 6 years later until we get a victory. Now, who just got vacated and who issued this terrible decision back in 2020 that was the rule at the time when the elections occurred? This guy right here, Emmett Sullivan. And he was appointed by Bill Clinton. He took office back in this matter on April 3rd, 2021 as a senior judge. So he went into senior status. But Bill Clinton appointed him back in 1994. And oh gosh, Gia Cobb, she actually took over for him thanks to Joe Biden. Oh, Gia the Cobb, I think, from the Star Wars film. So anyways, she now is taken over for Emmett Sullivan, but this was back from 2020. And now we win. Eureka. This was argued back November 7, 2025, decided July 14, 2026. And here is what they have found in our favor. They say, all right, before the 3-judge panel in the Court of Appeals, they said, you know, in 2020, long time ago, the United States Postal Service made changes to the collection, processing, and the delivery of mail. Yeah, just like we're trying to do now. Several states and municipalities sued, though. They said that these changes would affect mail voting and it would impact the November election. And so you can't do that, right? Because it might hurt their ability to win. So the district court, Emmett, entered a preliminary injunction against the Postal Service, says Trump admin loses, the rules can still be terrible, and later granted summary judgment for the blue states. But now, 6 years later, we conclude the district court, Emmett Sullivan, had no jurisdiction over that claim, should never have been able to even make that summary judgment finding or issue the preliminary injunction at all. Congress, the reason for this, created a review scheme that channels these complaints about Postal Service policies to the Postal Regulatory Commission. You can't just sue in an Article 3 court when Congress created another body to file your complaints through. And if you lose over there, then you can come over and seek review in our court. That statutory review scheme displays the district court's jurisdiction over the claim. Emmett Sullivan knew that. He instead weaponized his robe, weaponized the bench, and found in favor of the blue team in order to rig an election. Should have dismissed their claim. Should have said that Trump can make these changes, but didn't because the judges were in on the rigging. So therefore, we vacate the grant of summary judgment. The Blues actually lose. What the hell do they care? They rigged the election. They got their guy in office. And now, who cares if they get this reversed? It's all over. So this is a different matter. We're already now back in 2026 fighting for the Postal Service reforms and the citizenship list. Trump created a new executive order, and it's the same thing happening. Judge Indira Talwani from Massachusetts said, this is a breach of privacy. And I can hear this claim. And others are suing, like Sparkle Suki from Trinidad and Tobago, the dual citizen foreign-born judge, doing the same thing. You can't create these citizenship lists. You can't create a SAVE Act. You can't actually do any of these things. And who knows? Maybe we'll beat all of them in litigation, I don't know, a decade from now. I'll be a senior citizen. Like, yeah, we won 25 years later. In the summer of 2020, let's go back in time, the Postal Service implemented a set of operational changes that we're going to call as the postal changes. The postal policy changes included a reduction in the number of high-speed mail sorting machines, a decrease in employee overtime, the elimination of late or extra mail delivery trips, and a change in the sequence by which some mail carriers sort and deliver mail. We're not going to be facilitating your mass mail-in voter fraud. So go figure out another way to deliver it. Federal law requires the Postal Service to seek an advisory opinion from the Regulatory Commission before making a major change that will affect nationwide service, and they did not make an advisory opinion from the Commission before making the changes. But the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, inside of that, Congress provided that complaints about actions may be filed with the Commission, with review of the Commission. If they deny you, then you can come to the Article 3 courts. They didn't do that. The states of New York, New Jersey, Hawaii, City of New York, San Francisco, and others, they opposed the changes. Now, instead of actually following the law and going to the Postal Commission review scheme and filing there, they sued in the district court, just like what's happening now. The states argued that the changes implemented just months before November impeded their ability to send in rigged ballots. They raised 3 claims in the complaint, explaining that the government didn't request an advisory opinion and made the changes unilaterally. But in September 22, the lower level judge from Bill Clinton, Emmett Sullivan, held that the states were likely to succeed on the advisory opinion claim and granted an injunction. Said Trump can't make any of these changes because Emmett's the president now. The court rejected the government's argument that they had to go through the Postal Review Board and that precluded the court's jurisdiction entirely. But in Emmett's view, the scheme provided a separate avenue. They didn't have to go to the court. They could also come to us. Now, 2 years later, then election's over, litigation continues on. Now Joe Biden's in the White House and is, making a token effort to fight this. Then the district court granted summary judgment for the states. The court affirmed its previous holding. I have jurisdiction. They didn't have to go through the statutorily mandated mechanism in order to make their complaint, and I'm allowed to do this. He concluded the state's advisory opinion claim actually wins and stopped the Postal Service from implementing any of these changes, period. Then the government appealed, and we review the court's entry of judgment de novo. Now, we begin and end with jurisdiction. The states were required to bring the advisory opinion claim in with the Postal Commission, not in a lawsuit. And because they lacked jurisdiction, Emmett should have never heard the case at all. We hereby reverse. And again, what do they care? It's all under the water under a bridge. When Congress channels claims for initial review by an administrative agency rather than a district court, we have to respect that. Congress can do that. They can say, you've got a complaint about Medicare, that you go file here. You've got a complaint about the FTC, you go file here. We don't want to clog up the Article 3 courts with all of your whining. So to determine whether a review scheme channels a claim for review and precludes the district courts from hearing the claim, we go through a 2-step framework. And if we apply it, we conclude that you, Emmett Sullivan, lacked jurisdiction to consider the blue states' claims as required by Congress. And it's pretty simple, okay? Congress wrote it into law. When Congress creates procedures designed to permit agency expertise to handle an agency complaint, we follow that. The Supreme Court has several times held that a review scheme like this for agency action divests the other courts of ordinary jurisdiction over these cases. Otherwise, what good is the law? Everybody will just file in the courts. The commission review scheme contains all of the hallmarks of a regular statutory scheme that precludes our jurisdiction. Why? It provides for administrative review. It has judicial review if you don't like the outcome in the Article 3 courts. but not until you're done here. There's a whole due process here. Within 90 days of receiving a complaint, they have to begin proceedings and adjudicate the complaint or dismiss it. If they don't address the complaint, that constitutes a dismissal, and they can go over to the other courts. So given the structure of all of this, that means we are precluded. We cannot hear the case. And by the way, our sister circuits all also found this. Here's one from the Federal Circuit, 2013, another one from 2024, another one from 2006. Okay, so Emmett Sullivan knew about all of that precedent. Knew that he didn't have the right to do what he did, to take jurisdiction when Congress specifically divested him of it. Other parallel circuits said we can't do that. He did it anyways because he wanted the rules to be in effect for his political party. The states disagree, though, but their arguments are unpersuasive. They cite other laws that provide courts with original jurisdiction, but Congress and other grants must give way when Congress is explicit about it. And they were here. They channel it back to the commission, and that precludes Emmett Sullivan from making the decision that he did. Now, finally, the state's attempt to distinguish our sister circuits' decisions are misguided. They contend those decisions involved claims of inadequate postal services, and so it was a different type of claim there. But that's immaterial. This applies to all claims, and so the out-of-circuit decisions are relevant and persuasive, and everybody else found this way except for Emmett in 2020 because they wanted to rig the election. So otherwise, the Supreme Court has identified 3 factors to guide this part. And in other words, is there adequate process? Is there going to be adequate representation if you use what Congress created, or will you be divested of all your rights? They say here, there's a whole process for them. And they say, though, they're going to suffer irreparable harm. But there is no irreparable harm exception in the law. You don't get to come here and say, well, I really, really need you to hear this one. We can't. You have to go into the commission and make your complaint there. I know, but it's going to be bad. It's not in the rules. Congress channeled claims into the commission. An irreparable harm exception would undermine what Congress did. They didn't write that in there. And so regardless of what you are saying here, you should have filed your complaint with the commission even after the preliminary injunction was issued. And so you essentially say that because we got an injunction, then there could be no further review. But they could have actually done things differently, and they didn't do that here. And so, long story short, the judge says, in finality, we determine, and in determining whether the Postal Service should get an advisory opinion, it's also well within the commission's expertise. So you can make a complaint against them for not doing something that they should have done. And that type of claim can be adjudicated inside the commission. They say they can't adjudicate themselves. The court says, yes, they can. Congress said so. So go take it up with them. So when Congress has channeled claims away from district courts, like they did here, we must enforce that choice. And because of the Postal Commission's review scheme, the district court had no jurisdiction over their claims of the blues. And so accordingly, 6 years later, man, it's been a long time. We vacate the grant of summary judgment for the states and remand with instructions for the court to dismiss their lawsuit and get out of our court. So finally, it has happened. Judge Emmett Smith and his protege, Gouveia, now blown out. And the blue states are trying this again, by the way. This is part of their legal tactic. They don't care if they lose 6 years later. If they win the upcoming election, happy to lose 6 years later, as long as the rules that are implemented because of Emmett Sullivan's, who say I have power when he clearly doesn't, who issues injunctions to stop the executive enforcement of the law according to their will, not the court's will, they'll do it to continue to seize power on behalf of their political party. But now he loses. And one way that we could solve a lot of this is if we didn't have to worry about fraudulent mail-in ballots. We always will have to worry about it, but if we could confirm that the voter lists were legitimate and that people who were on the voting rolls are actual citizens, that would be beneficial. And there is some updated news out of the SAVE Act process. Here's Tim Burchett, who is explaining exactly what's going on, walking out of Congress saying we might be making some progress on this baby, which we're excited to hear. Here's Tim.
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett, two bills on the floor. Both are, if you look at them, they look very inconsequential, but they are actually important. The previous question is the first one, and then the rule. And the rule is they do that to, it sets up the bill to vote on it. It can, it's a procedural move, but it has to be done to get a bill of the stature that we're trying to get, and it attached the SAVE Act to it, so, in the press. So, anyway, those both passed. So, thank y'all for sitting here.
Thank you, Tim, for the update. We got a little bit more here. Josh Hawley was asked about this over from our friends at Lindell TV. Allison in the know, saying Hawley says that we'll back the SAVE Act and do whatever it takes to pass over in the Senate. Here's this exchange.
President Trump said on one of the last conversations he had with Lindsey Graham that he had mentioned that they were very close to getting the Save America Act across the finish line. Senators Mike Lee and Rick Scott are both now saying that in order to get this done, the Senate should stay in session through recesses and weekends. Is that something you would support?
Well, I support the Save America Act 100%, and I hope that we can do whatever it takes to pass it. And you know, I mean, I'm for making the Democrats hold the floor. I'm for changing the rules on the filibuster. I'm for the Save America Act. So I'm all for that. And I said last night, I think there's nothing that we could do that would be more significant for the country, and also would follow through on one of Lindsey Graham's top priorities than to pass the Save America Act. This is voter ID. I mean, I always say, Missouri, we've had voter ID for years. We put it on in our own constitution. We, the voters of Missouri. So every time my Democrat colleagues say, as I'll probably say in here in like 10 minutes, that'll never work. It does work. We've done it for years in my state. So I don't get why. I mean, I do know why they're opposed to it. It's because they want people who are not citizens to vote. That's the only reason.
Only reason.
And I just think that's wrong. We need to pass it.
And he plans to ask Blanche about his inaction on Anthony Fauci. I know Rand Paul and
Yeah.
and Ron Johnson have both been very vocal. And there was a statute of limitations that he actually let expire
Yeah.
to act on that.
Well, you're putting a little more forcefully what I was gently alluding to there a second ago, which is I think there's a lot of work left to do in the Justice Department. I really do. From
Yeah.
abuses that have happened in the past. And, you know, I can also think of the people who were targeted, prosecuted, or threatened with prosecution, Christians, pro-lifers. You know, let's not forget that the FBI tried to recruit informants into Christian churches and Catholic parishes, you know, in this country. So my own view is there has not yet been enough accountability on that. So I look forward to asking about that. I want to see some real accountability.
Yeah, me too, Josh. And they were also reading your text messages. So that's also a big problem too. So hopefully that happens. And here's the man at the helm in the Senate, John Thune, who, according to this clip on Fox News, says he may be interested in trying something with the SAVE Act, or at least telling us that he will.
Of his death, one of the things he talked about was he was the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, and he was the one who handled two of those reconciliation bills, the One Big Beautiful Bill, and then recently $70 billion in funding for ICE and CBP after Democrats shut down DHS. He was working on a third reconciliation bill that potentially maybe gets some elements of the Save America Act in it, but the senator is gone now. What happens to that potential third bill, Senator?
Well, eventually we'll figure that out. We've got to move forward. You know, obviously right now we are all in the process of still processing and mourning Lindsey's loss, but certainly on that level, the Budget Committee chairmanship, he did it with great, professionalism and ability to reach out and to work with everybody on our side of the aisle, many of whom have different opinions about how to deal with these big issues. But those were remarkable, consequential.
A result of his.
All right, so not much on the SAVE Act there, but he can mourn, take your time, but do it quickly. And you know what will make you feel better in a grieving moment? Election integrity and a restoration of our electoral process. That'll make you feel great, and it helps an ailing heart. So we've got a big election win. 6 years later, we'll take it. And hopefully this is good precedent for the future litigation, because we know the president is also fighting to have the Postal Service actually secure the integrity of the mail system so that fraudulent ballots are not sent back and forth from the states that enable universal enfranchisement like California, and then also refuse to actually validate and clean up their lists. So big win. Hopefully the first of many more to come, and it would be nice if we didn't have to wait until 6 years later, until after the elections were good and over. But we're happy to see it. We'll keep our eye on all of the election litigation. Thanks for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, we got one more update today, my friends, and then we'll hear from you. And this was a very interesting one. 2 Supreme Court justices testified today in Congress. Amy Coney Barrett and Judge Kagan were both there, and they wanted to increase their budget. They said they've had some security problems in recent years, largely after the Dobbs decision was leaked, which sent the abortion issue back down to the states. And we saw that there were some lunatics going after many conservative justices, like Justice Kavanaugh, who had a person called Nicholas Roski show up at his house and attempt to assassinate him before backing down at the very last minute. That person is now turned into a T, now calls himself Sophie, which is a pattern that we're starting to see around the country, where that little shift happens and people all of a sudden want to shoot up a school or other people in the neck. But here is Amy Coney Barrett, who seemingly is terrified, trembling, very nervous about what she's about to share with us, because she's also experiencing these death threats. She's been told to put on a piece of body armor and to defend herself against these lunatic left-wingers who are coming after her. And so we'll watch this clip and then see what you think about it and comment over it, because, of course, she has to understand the context of this committee hearing. Needs to kind of oversell this a little bit, too, if they want to increase their budget to ensure that they get additional security protections and more. So here's how this went down from Amy Coney Barrett today.
So I thought I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me to, my children, to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago, around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it. And I didn't know how to respond, because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one. It's also been reported in the news that roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident. At that point, my teenage son, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars, who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home. I was very, very grateful that I had Supreme Court police outside my home, because they were able to stop and meet with and explain to the county police that it had been a false alarm, and so the police did not actually attempt to enter our home. Many of us, me included, have received threatening anonymous deliveries designed to intimidate and harass us. They are often sent in the name of Judge Salas's son, who I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, Mr. Chairman, is deceased because he was killed by a disgruntled lawyer who showed up at Judge Salas's home intending to kill her, but her son, 20 years old at the time, opened the door and took the bullet instead. Her husband, standing behind, was seriously injured. So I think the message on these deliveries being sent in his name is clear. As Justice Kagan said, federal judges across the country, throughout the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, continue to do their jobs without fear or favor, but the threat level is really high.
Okay, so first of all, they do it with a lot of favor for one political party. Another question in the aftermath of this is that tremble in her voice, is that chain of thought that is being broken as she's speaking and explaining all of this, creating a sense of nervousness or trepidation about animating a certain political class in this country who will exacerbate all of those attacks that have her so nervous. I completely and totally condemn all threats on all judges and everybody. It's illegal. You shouldn't threaten and intimidate anybody. We, of course, condemn any political violence, always have. But why does she need to be so imaginative to her 12-year-old son? You don't have to imagine anything. You're not Spider-Man or something. Just say, I'm a Supreme Court judge, son. I'm in the highest court in America. We have a very important responsibility here. People don't like what we're doing. I have to stand by the law. That's the job I wanted. I went through a whole life career to get here, sat through confirmation hearings, and this is my sworn duty. So our country has some lunatics out there. I'm going to be safe. I love you. Now go make your bed. It's the same threat that many other people in the country have to face. When Trump got shot in the ear and almost killed, did he have to go and explain this to little Barron? Barron, I have to explain to you. Barron, all upset about it. I'm sure they had a conversation about it, but the woe is me type of argument, this is so dramatic. And again, she's now speaking to an audience of senators, like she wants her budget increased, so she's got to lay it on a little thick here. And I condemn it completely. But this is the role you signed up for. And if it's so traumatic that you can't even have a conversation about this with your 12-year-old, or you can't walk outside and your SCOTUS police can't keep tabs on the situation such that you're so nervous that you can't even hardly speak about it, maybe it's the wrong role for you. And the swatting, in addition to the bulletproof vest, YouTubers get swatted all the time. How many times has Tim Pool been swatted? And he just posts about it. He says, up another one. Up another one. Now, he's not a Supreme Court judge, but maybe he's got a better demeanor to be a Supreme Court judge. But a lot of this is now being ratcheted up as a both sides thing. And perhaps that's the most irritating component to this entire conversation, because it really isn't a both sides thing. We had the leftist Senate leader called Chuck Schumer back in 2020 with this lunatic clip. And we then had the Dobbs decision be leaked by whom? I would suspect a liberal judge on the court, probably Sotomayor, Sonia. But here is what Schumer had to say about this when he was making direct threats to the Supreme Court.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Really?
Pay attention to this. This has just happened. Law enforcement sources are confirming to Fox that an armed man was arrested near the Maryland home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Oh.
That happened early this morning. These are just the reports that we're getting in. And Sean, we know that the justices, there were protests outside of their homes. We know that those were encouraged. And of course, nobody was encouraging violence.
Sorry, Dana. Washington Post is now reporting a bit more. When he was in custody, he shared with police his desire to kill Kavanaugh. Wow. This is according to the Post now. The individual I mentioned described, mid-20s, a man, found to be carrying at least one weapon and burglary tools.
Yeah, and has now turned himself into a woman, according to their people, which we know is not possible. But we also have questions about this. And does this political pressure create a change in the court's decision-making? Are the judges now threatened and cornered into a position where they're actually changing their ideology and interpreting the law in a different mechanism so as not to anger one half of the country who's filled with lunatics who will actually show up to your door in an attempt to assassinate you? And again, we condemn that totally. And if that is the case, then it is good that we know about it. And if it requires giving every single judge, if Amy Coney Barrett, if we give her 100 Supreme Court police in an increase of her current 4 to 7, but she reverts back to her constitutional interpretation. I think it's worth it. But this guy, Roscoe Smith, I just followed him on X. He said that this is a very interesting dynamic that we're seeing here. Before Dobbs, Amy Coney Barrett voted with the conservative position in 81% of non-unanimous cases. Since then, that number has dropped sharply into the 50 to 60% range in the subsequent terms, including on major cases involving birthright citizenship, election procedures, and other administrative power, where she has sided with John Roberts and the leftists. We've got a great chart coming up. The Dobbs leak triggered violent threats and protests aimed directly at these justices. If the threat of violence or intimidation can move a justice's vote on these foundational issues, we have a constitutional crisis. 100% true. You know what you're signing up for in this position. And if it's too much pressure, if it's too much for you to handle, you really got to go. Judicial independence is not optional. It is foundational of the rule of law. When justices appear to bend under pressure, public trust collapses and the entire system is at risk. This cannot be allowed to stand. Threats against the court must be met with zero tolerance, full investigations, and real consequences, no matter who makes them. Anything less is an attack on self-government itself. And I couldn't agree more. And we do hope that there is actual justice. But if you remember in the Nicholas Roski case, the assassin who was going to go kill Kavanaugh, the judge gave him a pretty light sentence. Do you know why? Because he's a trans now. And that is really a really difficult thing to be going through. And so since he's transitioning from a dude into a dude who claims to be a woman, that is a mitigating factor in his long-term penalty. Amazing. So here you can see a breakdown on the numbers assembled by this fella here, Roscoe Smith. Give him a follow over at Lone Star Legend X on X. You see 2020, before Dobbs, she was about 65% conservative, 81% pre-Dobbs, 81% conservative. Dobbs' decision comes down. Numbers drop precipitously. You've got 59, 57, and 50 down in the 2024 term. And wait till we get those 25 numbers added up. So interesting chart here. Not sure where it's sourced from or if he made it on his own. But, you know, these charts, I think you could debate. You could say, well, what is a conservative? What is not a conservative decision? But interesting trajectory and pattern that we're seeing here. So all that happened today. And they also were asked about cybersecurity. Another interesting comment here, because Amy Coney Barrett says that they are under cyber attack, which is weird because seemingly there are cyber attacks on everything. Infrastructure attacks, executive branch attacks, the Chinese allegedly stealing entire voter registration list, and so on and so forth. But the only real systems that are immune to all cybersecurity are election machines, which is really interesting. So everybody should just take whatever Dominion is selling and just install it on everything, and nobody will have a virus in their entire life. Here's a conversation about cybersecurity attacks at SCOTUS.
Personal security, but it's also the IT systems that need to be updated. It's the cybersecurity that you're constantly attacked that's also being addressed in this as well. Correct.
Correct. The cybersecurity attacks have been up, by magnitudes year after year. AI is, and the rapid advancement of AI is making that more and more possible. We haven't suffered the kind of paralyzing attacks that some of the lower courts have, but in seeing that has caused us to try to ramp up very quickly our cybersecurity protection. And so some of the funding that we're seeking is for additional cybersecurity experts who can come in when we've tried to proceed very responsibly. We've consulted, we had an external review done by experts, and then we've assembled a tiger team inside the court to try to implement those suggestions, because it obviously impacts not only the independence of the judiciary, but their national security risks to having our systems be vulnerable.
One of the big issues recently was the leak that happened.
Yeah, how'd that happen?
The court was doing its best effort with the tools available at the time to track down the leak. I don't know if we've found the leaker yet. I don't think it's public.
The marshal issued a report at the conclusion of our internal investigation saying that we had not at that time. But
right.
Yeah, she also said in that report that were additional evidence or leads to surface that they would be pursued.
And it was Sonia, if I had to guess. And Molly Hemingway talks about this in her book, her new book about Alito. And she explains it as though the investigation was doomed from the beginning, that they didn't even actually segregate anybody or mirror or image certain devices. It was all just like, well, I guess we'll come back next week and start asking questions of people. So nothing was frozen. The leak was treated like it was just an oops email or something. And so I would suspect that they could have found who it was if they really wanted to, but they really didn't want to. And at some point, we'll probably hear from the leaker. The leaker will come back 15 years from now and say, I did it to try to fight for women's abortion rights or some crap like that. And has in turn created a lot of political violence by the leftists against the current Supreme Court makeup. So we also saw Kagan was there, a little bit of Kagan here today. And this was an interesting exchange because they were really trying to get her to rip on the court's internal processes. You hear this phrase all the time, the shadow docket, like the conservative Supreme Court is secretly handling cases. Trump files something and then they just act in secret behind closed doors and then steal the country from all the illegal aliens or something. But Kagan says we're actually handling it well. Okay, so it's not appropriate to call it the shadow docket. Stop saying things and phrases that have such a pejorative term to them.
Does that impact on the transparency, which you referred to, not putting up fences so that people had access? There are concerns, obviously, that these shadow dispositions impact adversely on the knowledge of the public has about how the courts makes its decisions and who is making what decisions. You can't comment on that?
Ranking Member Hoyer, there are definitely issues with respect to we call it the emergency docket. Some of us call it the interim docket. It's a terminology nightmare. I call it the emergency docket. And there are definitely questions about how it's appropriate to use that docket, when it's appropriate to use that docket, the standards to be applied, the way those standards actually work out in individual cases. And you see that in some of our decisions because we are, in many, if not most of these cases, not unanimous. There will be a majority and a dissent. The reason I think it's probably not appropriate, at least not now, to call it the shadow docket is because we have done, I think, a better job in the recent past of where appropriate, and it's not always appropriate, but where appropriate, explaining ourselves, at least to a moderate degree. So I think if you had asked me this question a year ago, I might have said that there were some cases, and in fact I did say, I had said in some public events that there were some cases where we did so little explanation of what lay behind our order that lower courts had a great deal of difficulty trying to figure out what that order was. Were we saying something about the merits of the case? Were we saying something about who had standing to contest the merits? Were we saying something about appropriate remedies? Nobody knew. I don't think that that's so much a problem anymore. I think that as we've gotten more experienced in these constant requests that are coming to us about requests for emergency relief, that we better recognize that at least sometimes there is a need for additional information. And we have issued opinions and sometimes majority and dissenting opinions accordingly.
Thank you very much.
And it is an interesting feature of the court in that they all will do their best, generally speaking, to defend the institution. Because if she comes out and she agrees with the leftists on this and says it is a shadow docket and we're perverting everything, she's not Ketanji. That's why they didn't send Ketanji here. She says, actually, we're doing a good job because she recognizes if she shreds the court, then the court and her power ultimately goes away. And maybe the court gets packed. And I don't think that even some of the judges on the current court may not want that. I mean, if they're extremely ideological, they still like being a gang of 9. They don't want to, burst up to 15 or make this like a small Senate. So they want to be a little bit more exclusive. They want to protect the institution. And so when the Democrats are like, it's a shadow docket, she's not really. Don't call it that. It was fine. Now, we've got one more exchange here from Susan Collins. And she asks about this rhetoric that's coming from guys like Chuck U. Schumer. Here's what she had to say.
38% increase in the number of threats that it is increasingly dangerous to be a Supreme Court justice these days. And it's appalling to me that some of the rhetoric is coming from public officials on both sides of the aisle who should know better than to levy personal and political attacks against the judiciary and the court specifically. For example, a senator stood in front of the Supreme Court building and called out 2 members by name, saying that they had released the whirlwind and that they will pay the price. Other public officials have called the court corrupt, out of control, and serving an extremist agenda. This overheated language, this completely inappropriate rhetoric against the Supreme Court endangers the lives of the justices and erodes public trust in our system of government.
She does have a point there, but there's a very fine line, right? Chuck Schumer should not be calling them out by name and saying you're going to pay a price and the whirlwind is coming for you. All of that is reprehensible, any more than he would appreciate anybody else in the Senate or the executive branch or the court saying the same thing about him, right? Once you're kind of in the system, you should have a modicum of respect for the other branches, recognize that these are other people doing their jobs. But at the same time, the court is supposed to be apolitical. It's supposed to be nonpartisan. We know that is impossible because these are people who are on the court. And we've seen it in many decisions where John Roberts can come out on one hand and say the unitary executive can fire people on independent agencies. And on the very same day, in the Lisa Cook case, say that that same power doesn't extend to the Federal Reserve, which is another independent agency created by a congressional statute, no different than any other independent agency, and just completely contradict himself on the very principles of Article 2. So, as we know, there are political rulings that come out of this court, and they are not beyond criticism. We're allowed to comment on them and say these are political decisions and they're bad, and respond to what they've done. We don't have to just sit there and just say, I guess the Supreme Court said it, so that's what the 14th Amendment says, birthright citizenship for all Chinese invaders who drop babies off at Have My Baby in Miami. We're allowed to respond to that. I, of course, want the court to do well, and I have a tremendous respect for the court as an institution, and I think it's a very important component of our system. But the court also needs to be checked as any other branch of government does. And so judges should be impeached by Congress. If you don't want the strong rhetoric here, Susan Collins and the rest of them, then you can just do your judicial duty, go impeach the sparkles of the land, send them back to Trinidad and Tobago, and we'll have a lot less criticism from them on our end. Now, as to the other side, they're just lunatics. They just transition themselves, get guns, and go outside the courthouses and threaten the judges. And by the way, they enabled this too. So again, this both sides crap is very annoying because Garland could have easily prosecuted all of the protesters standing and parading outside Kavanaugh's house, but he didn't do that. It's a crime to parade outside of a judge's house to try to ensnare them and to convince them to change their opinion on a case. Illegal under U.S. code. Didn't do that at all. So if you would then do something about that, haul Garland in, haul the executive officials into your committees, put them on the stand and ask them questions under oath about these policies. You start to exercise your check on the system, then people would run their mouths a lot less. And we would have, hopefully, less threats to the justices because we genuinely don't want that. Amy Coney Barrett seems bona fide freaked out about the whole thing. And that's not good for anybody. We want all of our officials to be able to operate in a system of governance without being killed or threatened to be killed or shot in the head or shot in the neck for speaking and doing what they think is right to participate in the American system. But if you just sit on your benches and condemn the language. And it's all language. Like, you should just shut up and not speak anymore and just allow everybody to just do their jobs according to the mechanisms they see fit, even if it's a poor job and doing poorly in their performance. We have a right to speak out about it. We're going to continue to do that. Congress should check the judiciary. The Supreme Court should check the lower level hack judges, and we'll have a much better functioning system. You have to pit ambition against ambition, as Madison said, and then some of the rot, some of the decrepit corruption that exists in the system, and the people that props up, like the protesters outside of Kavanaugh's house, will get dealt with, and we'll have a better country for it. So we're going to keep our eye on this one. I'm sure that the budget will be increased to the Supreme Court, and my understanding is that budget is actually not what I suspected. I thought we saw another article that said it was like $1 trillion, but it's not. It's like 300 billion, which is I would suspect is a pretty low number for an entire branch of government. But we'll see what happens here. I'm sure they'll get a raise. We'll see if that ultimately comes down. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends, and see if there's any more developments from SCOTUS during this off season before they come back in October. Thank you for joining us and being here as we do. All right, my friends, what a lovely stream it has been. If you're just getting here, we had a good one today. We had Grassley releasing the details about Jack Smith's perjury. And it's not just us saying that. We've got Rand Paul saying this is a blatant abuse of power. Jack was under oath and lied. And Holly said, this looks like perjury to me. We agree with that one. Saying everyone involved needs to be prosecuted. And I'm down for that. Thank you, Josh Holly. Sorry about that quip about your wife. We also had Jack Smith here. We watched the video. We read through all of the documents. The DOJ says, thank you for bringing this to our attention, like a customer service report. We also looked at all of the details and saw exactly how this went down. They had a filter team. They had meetings about the filter team. They didn't use the filter team. They got the documents that contained the actual text messages. They threw them in their drive. They sent them around to everybody, copying everybody. Go download the files and get to work on them. And Trump will be back on Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be here for that, baby. So thanks for subscribing and coming on back here on Thursday. Of course, we'll be back here tomorrow, too. But we then had a tremendous 2020 election victory. The president changed some rules to the Postal Service back in 2020, and the blue state sued to stop that from happening. Bill Clinton appointed judge called Emmett Sullivan, said he had jurisdiction over the case. He didn't. He stopped the rules from actually being changed. Shouldn't have done that. Knew he didn't have the authority, but did it anyways. And now the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has said exactly that. You had no jurisdiction. And so your summary judgment for the blue states is now vacated, remanded to dismiss and get out of here. We also had some interesting news on the SAVE Act. Apparently, there are some procedural mechanisms that are being deployed in Congress. We heard from Holly and John Thune. Doesn't sound like he's too interested in doing much of anything, but maybe we'll see. We then had Supreme Court news. Amy Coney Barrett seems freaked out, and it bums me out. I really wish she wasn't freaked out, but, you know, hopefully another 10 security guards will help that, and then she can come back to her birthright citizenship decision and give us an actual ruling. Meanwhile, we know that the leftists are the ones really agitating. They were protesting outside Kavanaugh's house. They were upset about the abortion Dobbs decision. They have never let that go because that is their sacred calf of their entire religion, abortion. And Chuck Schumer was the one instigating the whole thing. Nicholas Roski was out there. We had more from a couple of the judges and got to hear Susan Collins explain, tone it down out there, okay? Don't be so mean to the Supreme Court or something. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. Thank you for being here. If you're heading on out, thank you for subscribing on your way out, because we'll be back tomorrow, regular time, to get into whatever the day delivers, and it's always some good stuff. So we hope to see you back here. Meanwhile, we saw some great comments come in. Thank you, friends, for sending these in. And we had a couple from this morning. And we also wanted to pause and say a prayer for our friends, the Rubos. And so I got this email from the Rubos. You know Donald and Cheryl Lynn Rubo, okay? They've been part of our fam here for a very long time. And unfortunately, we have a situation where our friend Donald, who you know, Donald Rubo, is in the hospital today. So Cheryl Lynn sent an email, said Donald started having chest pains about an hour ago. This was about 4 hours ago. And I brought him to the emergency department. He's getting tests now. He has abnormal vital signs. Please ask the Watcher family to pray for him for healing and a good report from the doctors. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, from Cheryl Lynn. So we'll pause and we'll pray for the Rubo fam. And so Heavenly Father, please watch over Donald Rubo, who is in the hospital right now, surrounded by Cheryl Lynn, wrapping him in love. We ask for your guidance to make sure that he heals. Please guide all of the emergency room doctors and everybody in attendance to help him recover as quickly as possible, to address what is happening inside of his body. Send your energy and your healing right in there and fix whatever is ailing him so that he can return back into Cheryl Lynn's arms and return back to the Watcher fam, healed and ready to go. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And so, friends, if you're the praying type, thank you for sending one in for the Rubos. They're amazing people. They've been just awesome, and we're very sorry to hear that. And so, Cheryl Lynn, thanks for keeping us updated. And thanks for letting everybody here send you some prayers into that hospital room. And it's done. So thank you for that. Okay, so now, my friends, thank you for contributing to that. I think these things obviously really work because it's all real. So let's see who else is joining us on the day. We had some comments from this morning as well. And yes, we had a very interesting members only morning stream as well. We had Ivan Rakelin, who came and joined us. We talked for about 2 hours about Lindsey Graham, about the J6 pipe bomber, about he's got some criminal referrals sent over to a bunch of J6 individuals, law enforcement people and others. We had all of that this morning. We had a great talk and a lot of fun. If you don't know who Ivan Rakelin is, he's a very interesting fella. So we had a great time talking about that today. If you're a new member, check it out. We had a couple of donations come in the aftermath of that. Rob, thank you for that. And for sending that one in, 103-100, Smooth Jazz. AWOL Stu, man, thank you, AWOL, for sending that one in this morning. I think we missed you this morning. And Lauren Wimberly, what's up? 21 months as a membo. Thank you for that, Lauren Wimberly. That's coming up on 3 babies. Rarely catch a live anymore, but I'm still here, Rob. Man, we love you. Thank you, Lauren Wimberly. It's great to have you here. Even if it's not live, we're here. We're glad you're here in spirit. There's Jack Smith. Jack Smith listening into Trump and Ivanka's phone calls. Oh my gosh. Trump and Ivanka's phone calls, man. There's Jack Smith. Hopefully he's getting ready for handcuffs. Rick D. Well, says too little, far too late. The appeals court has finally overturned Judge Sullivan's decision from 2020, stopping the mail-in ballot safeguards the Postal Service had put in place, saying he had no jurisdiction over it. Man, you're ahead of the class on that one, Rick D. But yeah, that's exactly the case that we talked about today. Too little, far too late. I know. 6 years later. Amazing. Hey, there's Rick himself, man. Here's a toast. Cheers to Rick D in the house, man. Looking good, Rick. Hey, what's up, Joshua Dempsey? When can we expect the New York Appeals Court to rule? Which case are we talking about? That's a good question. Are you talking about which one? So I'm thinking about the E. Jean Carroll case, which was out of New York. Trump just paid her $5 million, so not that one. Maybe the Alvin Bragg case. I don't have any updates on that one. Alvin Bragg, the 34 felony convictions for the spreadsheet crimes that were based upon and predicated upon Michael Cohen, the convicted perjurer, and the porn star Stormy Daniels, who made up a rape claim in the middle of the trial. That one. I don't have an update on that one, but it's worth looking into. I don't have an answer on that, and I really should. When is that one going to be decided? Because he's appealing that through state court, but I think New York's Court of Appeals is very obtuse, so you can't see a lot. Hey, Mary E. Paquette. In the house. Yeah, in the house. Mary Paquette, 37 months, Mary. That's a long time. I never miss a show. Mary, thank you. We really appreciate that. What a lovely time together. Thank you for being here for so long and supporting us. 37 months, that's multiple babies. I need a calculator. Rubos. Okay, hey, Rubos. All right, so an update. Beloved Watcher family, Donald is currently in the ER undergoing test. After this morning's live stream, he was feeling some chest pains and shortness of breath. So as a precaution, I brought him to the ER. He's being admitted to the hospital for more tests and possible surgery. Please pray for my beloved husband. Man, Rubos, Cheryl Lynn, thank you for that update. Please keep us updated, and I will respond to your email. And if there's anything we can do, let us know, of course. But prayers up for the Rubos, my man. My friends, and the Rubos are awesome people. So he's going to be good. He's got an amazing team. He's got the loving hand of God guiding everything. So Cheryl Lynn, thank you for that update. Susanna, I noticed a message from someone named Barry requesting our prayer warriors pray for a young man, Caleb, in Virginia. Thought I would pass the request along. Shout out to Barry. And thank you, Susanna, for passing that along. And I wonder what that's about. But Barry, thank you for sending some prayers out to our friend Caleb in Virginia. And I'm sure our Heavenly Father will watch over Caleb and give him all the guidance he needs during this trying time. Thank you, Susanna, for that. I'll see if I can find out more about that. Rob, please spell Jack Smith with Lyngscumbag. I think that's how you spell it, right? Looks just lying scumbag. Yeah, AKA Jack Smith. Hey, Rob, was Mike Lindell in there? Remember they blocked him in a drive-thru and they actually took his cell phone from him with a warrant? Had permission to use his thumb to unlock his phone if looked at. I do remember that, but I didn't see his name in there. Although we flew through it pretty quickly, but I'm not sure if he was in there. Was he around a lot during the J6 stuff, or was he mostly like in the aftermath of that? But I'm sure he was on somebody's list somewhere. Philip Butler. And I don't think Mike Lindell was in there because it was a list of White House staff. He wasn't White House staff. So it was White House staff who were communicating with congressional people. So I think that's why he wasn't in there. Philip Butler. Was Trump's executive privilege waived by AutoPen? Another great question. Yeah, and I don't know if he would need to do that. I think we do remember seeing a letter from White House counsel. I think it was another Gary person who said that we've decided that, right? I've spoken with the president. I think he sent the letter over to Liz Cheney, right? The Liz Cheney people were asking for a bunch of things. He sent a letter back. And that was where it implicated Joe. So like Joe's been connected to everything. Waived privilege for J6, waived privilege for Jack Smith, actually met with Fannie Willis. They had people going over to the White House to meet with White House counsel. Nathan Wade worked for 8 hours, no pee breaks, billed for the whole thing. Matthew Colangelo left Biden's DOJ. Number 3 went over to join Alvin Bragg. It all goes right back up to Joe Biden. And they tried to make it as though there was some separation between the two, but it was all organized by the Democratic Party because they're sick people. Cliff Meggs. Rob, what's the legal path forward to bring Jack and the cabal to indictments? On this one, very simple. The problem with this is that they have to indict him or would indict him in D.C. So would a D.C. grand jury ever indict Jack Smith? I don't know. This is part of the problem. But is there any place else they could charge him for this? I mean, I think most of it probably happened in D.C. I mean, anywhere else is Eastern District of Virginia or something, also filled with feds. But on this one, there's no statute of limitations problem. I think they just impanel a grand jury, present the evidence. Jack Smith said this under oath, false statement to Congress. And that's illegal. Here's the evidence that they were actually looking at the messages. Thomas Wyndham connected Jack Smith. They said, give us an update on everything you've discovered after having read those messages and give us a brief on your witnesses so we can put them on the menu. And he was going to know about that. So it's all just connecting the dots. I think you just present it. Question, of course, is whether a grand jury in D.C. indicts, and if they do, whether they convict. Because it's D.C., man. And they have that institutional advantage that the right doesn't have. King of Biltong is here, man. Get your Biltong, BiltongUSA.com. You can use code Robert. You'll save 10% off because you don't want the same old protein snacks. Upgrade to Biltong from Biltong USA. It's clean ingredients, great flavored grass-fed, air-dried beef at BiltongUSA.com. You'll have some delicious protein and you won't be eating seed oil garbage. Sin, what's going on? Hey, baby will be here on the 18th, my birthday. Hey, Sinsin. Well, we've got our virtual baby shower on the 18th. That's coming up in 4 days. You trying to freak me out, Sinsin? You want the baby here in 4 days? I thought I at least had a week. My birthday and hearts, man. Thank you, Sinsin. And so hopefully we see you at the virtual baby shower. Links are in the description. All links. Click the all links link and it will take you to our Zoom registration form if you want to join, or the registries if you want to get new baby G something. We'd appreciate that. But we just would be happy to see you on Saturday. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, virtual baby shower. And we're going to have a lot of friends there. So we're very excited to see everybody. And we've got some games planned. We've got a whiteboard planned. We've got a Zoom background planned so you can share your background. It's going to be great. Thank you, Sinsin. Maybe somebody thinks it's going to be what, like July 15th tomorrow? Going to come here tomorrow with a baby? Oh my gosh, Sinsin. So I think we just had a baby appointment today. And, you know, we'll see when this little creature comes. But we're super excited about it. So thank you, Sinsin. Happy birthday coming up. LZ, how many people could be indicted? Sounds like a dragnet is needed to get everyone from the Guppies up to Jack Shark Smith. Someone should be motivated to turn. I would indict everybody on that list. Everybody in those documents who was a part of this, who knew about what they were doing and abused their office to violate process, to spy on Congress people, should be prosecuted. And then they can make deals. Should be like the new J6. There should be a new weaponization committee that actually does something. And why? Hey, the decision is nice from the appellate court, but unfortunately it means zero. It does establish some good precedent. So the next time, you know, there's going to be a change with the U.S. Postal Service, they're going to have to actually file a commission request because it's now precedent in the Court of Appeals in D.C. The blue areas in a new election can sue in Article 3 courts all over again in immigration, election, whatever they want. Yeah, did you see Khalil? That foreign-born person here with lawful status is now suing like everybody, like the Heritage Foundation and all these things. It's wild. And the courts will entertain it. The whole thing's wild. Unless Congress does something about this, the laws are whatever the lawyers and the judges want it to be. Yeah, that's exactly my point. That's exactly what I was saying about Susan Collins. It's like, you guys got to do something. Okay, like very easy to just sit there and just say, you should talk nice about people. That's great, but it'd be easier to not criticize if our government was actually handling the situation. The only other option we have is to use our First Amendment right to moan about your inability to actually create a functional society. Hans, their complaints about security make me wonder if the lunatics were the reason why birthright did not go our way. Maybe. Yeah, maybe they didn't want some illegal alien gangbanging gang to come take them out. MS-13, Tren de Aragua, which Boasberg says, keep them here. You know, maybe they didn't want to agitate them. So like, okay, fine, we'll give Tren de Aragua and the Chinese nationals birthright citizenship so they don't show up to our house and kill us. Rick D, a judge in Florida who ordered the release of an illegal alien who hijacked a plane. Oh, that's not funny. On July 8th, Judge John Steele in the Middle District of Florida ordered that ICE must release Gouveia Morales, a criminal illegal alien from Cuba. Following the judge's order, ICE was forced to release the guy, charged with convicted for hijacking an aircraft. Wild. Yeah, I mean, it's just like what are you supposed to do about that? And Congress doesn't do anything. The Supreme Court doesn't do anything. These judges are just backstabbers. Rob, ACB has one child that has an intellectual disability. Schumer should have been arrested that day. He wasn't even in the Senate. Speech and debate shouldn't have covered what Schumer did in public. In other words, that was a threat. He was attacking the third branch of government. It would be like threatening President Trump. And Garland should have arrested him. But he wouldn't have. Man from Rob in the House. Yeah, they don't do anything like that. Yeah, they don't do anything like that. Oh, man, we lost another one. Another angel gets her wings. My good friend Felicity in Canada. Man, prayers up for Felicity and her family. Lost her grandmother today. Grandma escaped the fascists in Italy in the 1930s, had 6 kids, 28 grandchildren, and has rejoined Grandpa today at the age of 93. Man, good for her. Maria, for those of us who knew you, you will be missed. And so, Heavenly Father, please accept Maria into your loving arms, rejoined up there with her grandpa in eternal bliss and heaven. And she really did a hell of a job down here, man. 93, 28 grandkids, 6 kids, and it's always a terrible loss. And so Felicity, prayers up for Felicity and her family who lost a good one today, but we'll all be reunited again. And for now, she's up there with her love in the arms of Jesus. And it's just great. So Rick, thank you for sharing that. We're going to send some love and healing over to Felicity. It's always a loss. And, you know, hopefully your sharing her story brings them a little bit of healing, because that is a hell. That, I mean, it's just like the reason I kind of smile. I'm like, wow, it's like she ran a marathon and she just crushed it. It's like, wow, like you can only, you know, wish for a life that full. So amazing stuff. Sorry for your loss, but she sounds like an amazing woman. And so we honor her memory and may she rest in peace. The average mountain man. We have a problem with judges and justices bending the law to fit their personal politics. 100% true. 19 months as a membo. Thank you for being here. The average mountain man. Yeah, good stuff. They do. And that's a big problem. We cover it basically every day here. Hey, Scott Hotved, has anyone heard from Lenny lately? I miss him. Lenny, where are you at? Reveal yourself. Yeah, I notice when people are not here, it's like a missing student in class. Sometimes they get sick of us, which is totally understandable. Need a break. I, unfortunately, can't take a break from myself in any reasonable way. Scott, thank you. Welcome aboard as our newest supporter. Scott, we'll see you in the morning. We've got an interview scheduled tomorrow morning. We did an interview this morning. We have another interview tomorrow morning with Mike Howell from the Oversight Project. They got a bunch of litigation going on. We're excited to talk to him. Sharp dude. And he's suing for the Biden audio. He's suing for the deportation records. And he just sued in Arizona to get the attire victory that we talked about last week. So he'll be joining us tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time. And we're excited for that convo. Gina, hey, 4 months, Gina. Thank you for being here. Almost halfway to a baby. Thank you. I love that we pray together. Man, me too. Thank you for praying with us. I'm trying to get better at it, you know, but it works, man. And I think it really works. So thank you for praying. Thank you for sharing it. It's a real thing. So thank you for allowing us to pray with you. Rob, hopefully the baby won't come during the baby shower. It's true. It's true. Maybe it will. I don't know. It'll be a hell of a virtual live stream. I'll tell you that, if that does happen. It's going to be wild. So if you want to join us, links are in the description. Click the all links and it'll take you over there. Hey, Jim tells you, man, we'll send some friends over your way. And yeah, this is a good comment. A baby is never late, Robert Gouveia, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to, or she, you know. But that's exactly right. Whenever this little creature comes, man, I'm going to be very excited about it. And I think, and I think Alexis is too. But you know, there's like this, like I was talking about this at the birth center today. I was explaining, I'm like, man, there's like this like low grade anxiety kind of a thing. It's like a pop quiz. Remember when you get like a pop quiz? You're like, there's gonna be a pop quiz this month. You're like, oh crap, when's it gonna be? And then you get in there and you're like, should I study today? I don't know. It's like pop quiz. You're like, oh, okay, I'm ready. Like I know what we're talking about. It's kind of like that, except it's not a pop quiz. It's a human being coming out of my wife. So it's a little bit different stakes, you know, but that's the thing. It's like, it could come between this window or this window. And it's just, you know, it's like, when's it going to come? It's really a very interesting experience. Hey, Bill Dozer, good job. Good job holding back that gallows humor about taking a break from yourself, Rob. No, I totally was. You can see the gears turning. You can see the mind work. And I can't say those things. So thank you, Bill D, for acknowledging that. And I did it. I on my best behavior. Scott, hey, becoming a father was the greatest gift from God. When I had my first son, it changed how I saw everything. Thanks be to God. Man, I've heard that many times over. And I believe that, I'll have a very similar experience. I have no doubt about it, because the whole process has really changed a lot of my perspective on things. It's like thinking about abortion as you watch your wife go through this entire process, thinking about late-term abortion as this baby's kicking around inside her belly, thinking about surrogacy, paying another woman to carry your child kind of a thing, and what that does to her, what it does to her body, what the experience is. It's been very eye-opening in terms of, government policy, but also on the human side of like how we all got here and what you've gone through, and like thinking about what your mom went through in order to bring you here. It's been a beautiful experience, and she's amazing. She's been doing such a great job. So we're excited for it. Very excited. But Scott, thank you for that. And you sound like an amazing father. Shout out to your kids. And thanks for sharing that with us. We're very excited. And of course, we appreciate your input and your guidance. And many of you have sent us so many nice things. Alexis is like unpacking things and creating a list, and we're going to be sending amazing thank yous to everybody. But thank you so much. I mean, it's been a really beautiful part of our experience to be able to get your input and to share things and to talk about these things. And Alexis has popped on, and we both just feel very blessed and very loved. So we're very grateful for all of it. So thank you very much. And let's see what else we got, my friends, and then we'll wrap on the night. We have some comments over on locals. We do. A couple of comments here. And let's see who's joining us. Yeah, hey. Okay, so here's more on Caleb. Yeah, so Rob, I don't do this unless it matters. A teenager in Prince George, Virginia, has cancer, and I want all your prayer warriors to mention a name on their God phones for Caleb. So Caleb has cancer. He's a teenager on his second time of Ewing cancer, or don't even know what that is. But please have your prayer warriors mention Caleb from Virginia for healing on his second trip through this process. And a great one from Susanna. Here, let's use this prayer, man. This is great, Susanna. I am an intercessor by the Lord's calling on my life. I have been praying, an honor to join others in prayer, and Jesus is our high priest, as you know. And in cases like Caleb, I humbly ask the Lord himself to be my prayer partner. He hears our cry, blessings, and I pray for an awareness of his presence as he helps Caleb heal in Virginia. Get all of the care that he needs, have doctors be enlivened with precision and healing excellence, and that all of the necessary functions happen in order to rid that cancer right out of his body. Barry, thank you for sharing that with us. Prayers up for Caleb in Virginia. Prince George, Virginia. Thank you, Barry. And, oh, you're a cancer survivor too, man. It's amazing. Prayer warriors up. So if you do your regular prayers, add Caleb to the list. He's got some cancer, and he could use them. The Veil shared a conversation with some AI stuff about Mark Elias and married women. Thank you, The Veil, for that. Hey, and Elliot shared his oathless Jack. Oh, Elliot, I should have talked about that story too. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we'll come back on that, Elliot. I feel like an idiot today. Thank you for that. And check out Elliot's Substack, because Jack Smith also didn't even properly take an oath. Look at these documents that Elliot got. Man, he's so smart. Doc Master in the house. So Jack Smith didn't even sign his oath or have a witness on his oath. The dude is so illegitimate. It's just like painful. So thank you, Elliot. Tweak. Hey, Rob, I suck at picking out presents. Even if you have made a list, can you say something that Alexis really needs or wants? Let's prioritize the dear mother, not symbolical. Help me, Rob. It's a good question. I'll have to ask her and see what she actually needs. But, you guys have really sent us a lot of stuff. So, I don't know. It's a good question, Tweak. What? Could I think of anything offhand? I can't. I got to work on that. Thank you, Tweak. Good to see you, my friend, and appreciate you asking about her because she's amazing. The Veil, does anything about Graham's sister taking the reins make it seem like she's taking over her brother's job. Yeah, that is literally what she's doing. Does it feel like it's anything normal if it's true? I don't know how normal it is, but it is true. Did we not create the USA to get out of family name and family bloodline rulership over our nation? Yeah, I think we did. You know, we generally don't like we had this situation where we're almost going to have like Bush, Clinton. Remember that? And then Trump came in and CCC combo breakered the whole thing. But this is just an interim appointment, you know, so I don't know that it's long term. We'll see. But everybody there wanted her. So she's the heir apparent. What's up? Walk it off. Sometimes we have to work or on the road without reception and can't listen till later. Man, get some skates. Walk it off. Thank you for that. Yeah, we missed you live, but it's always great, you know, if you can catch the show after the fact, just to stay updated, stay plugged in, know what's going on out there. And, you know, work's important, man. So walk it off. Hopefully you're accomplishing all of the work activities and crushing it out there. Oh, man, Rick D. Well, Rob, I have delivered about 67 babies and assisted on delivering about 500 or more. So if it happens during the virtual baby shower, I am here to help. That's great. You can just walk us through. Yeah, we'll just put the camera right down there for everybody to see. Hey, Rick, what do we do next here? Where does this thing go? I don't think that, you know, that's a joke. All right, Rick, thank you. Ewing carcinoma is a combination of bone and soft tissue cancer that hits kids pretty bad, man. So prayers up for Caleb. Thank you, Rick D. That sounds terrible, man. Well, you know, when things hit young kids, it's just like devastating. Like, they haven't done anything to anybody. So such innocence, you know, having to suffer through this, but hopefully God's watching over our friend Caleb in Virginia. And Barry, thanks for shouting him out so that people can send some prayer. Rick, thank you for the details on that one. All right, so friends, we'll pause here on the day. It's been a lovely stream. We'll come back tomorrow, 10 a.m. We'll have a great interview with Mike Howell over from Oversight Project. We're looking forward to that. And then we'll be back tomorrow night to get into it again as well. Let's see. We got a couple of comments here on X. John Cobb, when are you going to be on Timcast? He's just around the corner. That's a great question. I should reach out to them. Yeah, I think I was talking with his producer like a while ago, but I was in Arizona at the time. And so I don't think it went anywhere. It's like, oh, you're in Arizona. You know, like, yeah. But we're here now. So that's a good reminder on that one. Shout out to Tim Pool. He should be on the Supreme Court since he's been swatted and can deal with it better than the Supreme Court judges. Hey, Jenny says Amy Coney Barrett voted out of fear for the Dobbs decision. She needs to resign. She needs to be replaced with Ted Cruz, who would never bend the knee to any of this. From Jenny D. Farmo Man. Hey, great reporting by Robert Gouveia, man. Thank you, Farmo Man, for dropping that over on X. Jenny D. Thomas is also attacked. Kavanaugh targeted for assassination. And if you can't take the heat, you got to go. From Jenny D. Philly Mama says NARA, Project Coconut, a Harris emoji thing, no filter. From Philly Mama. And Misinformation Super Spreader says, as loath as I am to say this, that friggin' Weasel Smith will likely avoid any perjury charge due to the specificity of the questions posed. Technically, he did not subpoena toll records. Instead, he did a Fourth Amendment runaround by getting the records from NARA. He's such a POS. Yeah, in that exchange, though, did they say the word subpoena? Or was it, did the information you request? Because I think it was, did the information you request have the things? Here, let's just play this real quickly here. It's 19 seconds. Let's see.
The toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls?
No.
Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages?
No.
Can you
Yeah, so maybe that's talking about the subpoenas, and in the subpoena there was a request. And so maybe he's being very careful about that. But you could also read that as the request on the senators. So once he got, right, I would say it's a request. He made the request of NARA for the employee list. Once he got the employee list, he then took the employee list, went over to the FBI, got the phone numbers, then got the phone numbers, and then made the request of the content of the messages from the senators via the phone numbers. So he didn't need a subpoena because he requested them from NARA and all of the messages were there. He just cross-referenced the senator's numbers with the data that he made in their request. So, and you know who can decide that? A jury after he's indicted. But I get your point. They are very sneaky. They're very weaselly with all these things. And that would be a good defense. Like technically, he didn't actually subpoena those things. They just were disclosed to him. He never requested anything. They just came from NARA in that fashion. And so he didn't request anything, right? Kind of one of those defenses. And he can make that defense, no question, after the indictment drops. All right, so friends, we'll pause here on the night. It's been a lovely day, a lovely stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for subscribing to the channel if you have not already done that, because we'll be back tomorrow to get into all this again and more. Before we close it out, big thank yous to our amazing mods and meme smiths. We got John in the house. Thank you, Muffin Rando. What's up, Donut? Mind me, modding the fort down for us. K-Bean in the house. We got Neuro D. We got Janek, we got Dog Digger over on the Rumbles. We have Geegum Geegum, Elliot, Just Rhonda, our purveyor of fine emojis. And friends, thank you for being here. Thanks for liking the video also on your way out. And then we'll come back tomorrow to get into it again, because in order to do this appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Have the most pleasant, peaceful, and sweet dreams, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care.